Yo guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be walking through how to make ethnic dark beats in the likes of, Cubeatz and Southside. But before we get into the video, guys, you're literally one sub away from 1k subscribers as of recording, so make sure to drop a sub, like, comment. I appreciate all the support, and we're doing a lot of free giveaways when we hit 1k, and I'm really looking forward to what we can do this year. So again, thanks for everything, but let's just get straight into the video. So first things first, we got ourselves an instance of Purity, and I'm using a slow synth preset called the Sean Pad. And from what we can see here, I'm doing this in a 160 BPM range with a key of C minor, and this beat is based at 160 BPM in the scale of C sharp minor. So when we're looking at this pattern, it's very simple, straightforward. As you can see here, we start off with the root note C sharp, repeating literally every half beat. Then I just got up to here. In these two notes, as you can see, is a one note away from each other, all known as half step notes. Same applies to over here with this G sharp. That means these notes are placed in a scale where they're one note apart of another note, known as a semitone apart, making it very dark, giving it that nice little dark vibe that Cubeatz can aim for, in especially Southside. So started off doing that all the way over here, repeating it literally every one bar. But then for the second half of the pattern, I just copy and pasted it up a whole octave instead. As we can see, this is purely just for variation, nothing more, nothing less. But let me just show you what it sounds like. And there we have it, giving us a nice little bass for the whole beat, really dark sound, and it's really coming off nicely. As for effects, I got myself a preset called Time and just kept it like at a pretty high percentage in terms of dry wet. Then I got an instance of gross beat up and used a half beat gate, and as you can see, the volume's on 80% mix. Then I got myself a nice little EQ going, cutting off all the lows and ducking some highs. And of course, last but not least, a bit of reverb just to add some ambience to it. And then looking at stereo separation, if you have headphones on, you'll notice that we stereo separated this around 30% just to widen the sound within the whole beat. Next up, we got ourselves an instance of Contact 7, and I got myself the Balkan Ethnic Orchestra bank opened using the preset called the Caval 2. And as we can see right now, these are just two notes playing at the G sharp and the B. These are just two notes playing at the G sharp and the B, and these two notes are actually phrases, just for context. But without further ado, this is what the flute phrases actually sound like. And there we have it, just a nice little phrase at the beginning of each 4-bar, giving it that energy that it needs for that nice little ethnic vibe. As for effects, the first thing I did was get Sooth 2 open, default presets. Then I got myself an instance of this EQ, cutting off all the unwanted lows. And then last but not least, a Valhalla vintage verb, just to add some ambience and reverb to the sound. Next up, we got ourselves an instance of Whirly 5, and the preset I am using is called like the Keller Prairie. Don't know how to pronounce it, but there you have it. And this is the pattern we've got laid down. It's very simple and straightforward. But to break it down, before I actually play it and everything, this is kind of like a call and response thing going on with the flute, because as you can see in the first half of each 4-bar, it's empty, and that's why I let the flute play. Then, that's what you'd call the call. But the response is this nice little like Rhodes keys thing, and it occurs in the second half of the 4-bar. And then breaking it down, it's essentially just a minor chord stacked on top of each other, just at two different octaves. Then here, I took it up a whole octave again, but instead of having it two minors, it's like two diminished minors, as you can see from this note. Then the last thing I did was click Alt-S to strum the note, making it sound more human. And of course, I clicked Alt-R as well to randomize the velocity, making the Rhodes sound much more natural. So without further ado, this is what the Rhodes sound like with this nice little call and response. And there we have it. Now for the effects, the first thing I did was just get a basic fruity chorus playing over it. Then I added a Portal preset called Light, just to give it a bit of texture. Then on top of that, I got this specific preset that I made in Fruity Delay 3, just to add a bit of delay, add a bit more of like a balance to the whole sound. And then finally, we got a Valhalla vintage verb with a heavy amount of reverb, as we could see. And as for the stereo separation, this sound was stereo separated around 50%, again, just widening it in the mix. Now for the two final patterns. First things first is, we got ourselves a nice little bell, hits every 4-bar on the root note of C sharp minor. And then for the final sound, we got ourselves an instance of Analog Lab 5, using the bass presets here. That is from Artillery, my go-to bass pretty much at this point, the source bass. And as we can see, this is the pattern I've got laid down. Plays every 2-bar, very simple, straightforward. And the reason the notes aren't connecting at all, as you guys can see here, is because I feel like it adds a bit of tension to it all, just having this nice little start-stop of the bass. But without further ado, this is what the whole sample now sounds like. And there we have it. So as you guys can hear, a nice little ethnic vibe, very much suiting the whole Cubeatz and Southside style. But without further ado, let's just get straight into these drums. First things first on the drums, we got ourselves the snare pattern here. Looks a bit crazy, I do have to admit, but let me just break it down. So when we look at the snare pattern, to really simplify it first is just let's look at these snares. The simple snares that are playing normally right here. However, I added this nice little snare for an extra bit of bounce, then the snare in, and then this nice little cool roll going on in the end. And that's essentially repeated throughout the whole 8 bar. Then when we look up here and down here, these are what I consider like the variation parts of the whole snare pattern. And the way I actually try and build my snare patterns, as you can see, for example, in this instance here, these snare rolls kind of hit with the 808, giving it that extra kind of harshness and the extra like aggressive bounce that comes with the Southside drum patterns. And when looking here, I went into the magnet tool, went into quarter step, and all I did was just click these notes in, as you can see, 4 times, and then just dropped it 1. Whereas for this note, it was just kind of like a bouncy snare, because realistically, if I took it back up here, as you can see, it's like a regular snare pattern, but then just left it down here instead. And then of course, same applies to this snare. As you can see, it would be a typical snare bounce, but I just took it all the way up. And then for the sake of variation, I just had this nice little roll going on here instead of just having this same basic one. But with that being said, this is what the snare pattern sounds like. And there we have it. As you can see, nice little bounce going already, but let's just move on to the hi-hats. Now, looking at the hi-hats, it may look like a bit of a complex pattern, but to be honest with you, it's very simple and straightforward. So to break it down, let's just look at the first 4 bar here, because it is essentially a 4 bar looped over. And when we look at it right here, again, I'm still on the magnet quarter step tool, go over right click, scroll down once to the paintbrush, click a normal note, and then you'll be able to drag in all your hi-hats. And if you click shift and drag, as you can see, you can literally squiggle them in however you want. So as you can see here, starting off, just did a nice little normal roll, then drop this note down by 1, and then added an extra little roll here. I really like doing these types of rolls. I think they go really nicely, to be honest, especially in a Southside vibe. Then over here, it's essentially just a normal roll again with the quarter step, but I put a space in between every single one. Then drop it into another roll again, as you can see here, down 1 note, and then just doing that nice simple roll. Again, playing with the pitch of this note here, same over here, but then adding another roll here. But this roll is just copy and pasted up here, and this roll is essentially the same as this one. You see, keeping that kind of repetitive roll theme going, it makes it very nice for the listener because it keeps a nice little bounce going instead of just having these crazy rolls going all over the place. And then of course, for the whole sake of, you know, keeping it bouncy and repetitive, I just copy and pasted this first 4 bar to make it a full 8. So without further ado, this is what the Southside kind of hi-hats along these mad snare rolls sound like. And there we have it. Now onto the 808s and the kick. And from what we can see from the 808 pattern, I really just kept it simple and nice because the hi-hats and the snares are already going crazy. The beat's already going hard. So I was like, you know what? Let me just leave it a bit more simple for the 808s. So from what we can tell, it's essentially just this nice little 2 bar looped over, but for the sake of variation, drop this nice little G note at the end, and as well as that, have this nice little note playing for a bit of bounce, and then just copy and pasted the pattern to make it a full 8 bar. And now before I move on to show you the kick pattern, I always emphasize this in every video. Max out your velocities for your 808s and kicks. This is really good because it makes your 808s much more punchier. Same goes to the kick, and it really makes it more appealing to artists when they hear your beats, because at the end of the day, we are making this for artists. We want to have punchy drums going in. And the way you can do this, of course, just click Ctrl A to highlight everything, and then using the scroller wheel on your mouse, just scroll up until your velocity is completely maxed out over here. Now looking at the kick pattern, it's essentially the same as the 808 pattern, just instead of having it at the root note of C sharp, took it down to the B because I thought the kick sounded nicer. And as well as that, I removed the kick when this like G note plays at the very end. So without further ado, this is what the 808 and the kick sound like. And there we have it, folks. And now, last but not least, we got ourselves the open hat pattern. As we can see here, it pretty much repeats every 4 bar, but with a slight bit of variation. So looking at the first 4 bar, as we could see, I got it playing on the instant 1 hit, and then I've got this open hat playing where an 808 would kick in as well. Then I copy and paste it over, making a full 8, but then again, for the sake of variation, I introduced this other hat that plays where the 808 hits as well. And now, without further ado, this is what a beat in the style of Cubeatz and Southside sound like. And And there we have it. But before we wrap up the video, let me just walk you guys through the structure of my beat. First things first, looking at the intro, we got ourselves the bass playing alongside the bell and the main pattern. Then my producer tag kicks in. Now we're looking into the chorus. We first start off with all the basic drums, which is your kick, your 808, your hi-hats, and your clap, or snare of course. But all I've got playing is the simple pad pattern. But for the second half, I introduced the bell, I introduced the flute, I introduced the open hat, giving it like a nice little bit of extra punch, making the chorus hit much harder in the second leg. What I've got going on here is a free 8-bar verse. But looking at the first section, the way I start off is just with the simple drums again, but without the kick. But I use the bell as kind of like an indicator that we're hitting into the verse, playing with the pad by itself. Now we're coming into the main section. I introduce the flute again. All of the drums are playing together alongside it, giving it a very nice, like, fast, aggressive vibe. And now for the third part of the verse, I literally just keep it very simple. Have like the kick and hat hit at every 4-bar, and I introduce the whole sample, including the Rhodes keys now. And the reason I've done this is because it gives it a nice little vibe for the artist, making them like aware that, yo, we're going to transition into the chorus soon. We got 8 more bars. Do your thing. And then of course I just copy and paste the chorus again. I introduce a new verse again, which is a free 8-bar verse with a bit of a different pattern. And then again I introduce the chorus, but for the second half I have pretty much the whole sample playing apart from the bass. And there we have it, folks. That's how you make a nice little beat with, of course, one intro, 3 24-bar verses, 2 16-bar choruses, and that's it. And there we have it, folks. 1 8-bar intro, 2 24-bar verses, and of course 3 16-bar hooks. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, almost at 1K. And of course, take it easy. Peace.